Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse and the co-prophet of the end times. The topic for the first half of today's program is chapter 2 of that great Old Testament prophet, Daniel, where the king has his famous dream of a statue with a head of gold, chest of silver, belly of bronze, and feet of iron and clay. Now, why should a dream of a king of Babylon who lived more than 2,000 years ago have any significance for those of us living today? I believe that the destruction of this statue, which the king sees in his dream, prefigures the destruction of the one world communist tyranny which we are about to enter into. Let's see what Daniel writes in verse number 32. The head of the statue was of fine gold, but the chest and the arms of silver, the belly and thighs of brass, and the legs of iron, the feet part iron and part clay. Then a stone was cut out of a mountain without hands, and it struck the statue on the feet that were of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. This is the destruction of the one world government, which Daniel is prophesying about more than 2,000 years ago. Most Bible scholars understand that the head of gold on this statue symbolizes Babylon. The arms and chest of silver symbolizes Persia. The belly and thighs of brass symbolizes Greece. The two legs of iron symbolize the two halves of the Roman Empire. And the feet of iron and clay symbolize our own times. The 10 toes refer to the revived Roman Empire, which consists of the 10 greatest nations in the world today. But what does the clay symbolize? The clay which holds the iron together in the toes of the statue. The clay symbolizes mankind, because man was made out of the dust of the earth. God made us out of clay. That means that the end times one world communist tyranny will be one world under man, not one nation under God. And the resulting tyranny will eventually be controlled by the Antichrist and ultimately by Satan himself. Now, the stone that breaks the statue and hits the feet refers to Jesus when he comes and sets up his millennial kingdom. We are going to see that in chapter 6 and chapter 4, this millennial kingdom is also predicted by Daniel. Here in verse 44 of chapter number 2, Daniel writes, "In the days of those kingdoms, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, and it shall break in pieces and consume all of those kingdoms, and it shall stand forever." The kingdom which stands forever is the millennial kingdom, when Jesus will rule in the hearts of men with a rod of iron. Now, in the previous verse, number 43, Daniel writes that the iron and clay of the toes will also be mixed with the seed of man. This means that the one world communist tyranny will control even the reproduction of mankind. And we see a preview of this even today in communist China, where families can have one child only. Now, in chapter number 6, we read the famous account of Daniel being thrown into a lion's den. This story, of course, prefigures the plight of end-time Christians who will have to go through 7 years of tribulation. Notice in this next verse, number 17, that the king seals the lion's den with his ring and the ring of the nobles. And a stone was brought and laid across the mouth of the den, which the king sealed with his own ring and the ring of his nobles. Now, this is almost identical to the great tree that is cut down in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, as related in chapter number 4. where the stump of the tree is banded with a band of iron and a band of brass. These two seals, these two bands, refer to the one world government and the one world religion of the end times. However, we need to understand that the end result of these kingdoms is the same as what will happen to the one world communist tyranny. It will be defeated by Jesus at Armageddon. In chapter number 4, King Nebuchadnezzar comes to his senses after 7 years, and his kingdom is restored to him greater than before. That greater and before prefigures the millennium. Here in chapter number 2, the stone that breaks the statue also prefigures the coming of the reign of Christ during the millennium. Now when Daniel is released from the lion's den, that marks the beginning of the millennium, as Daniel writes in verse number 25. Then the king wrote to all the people, tribes, and languages dwelling in the whole earth, peace be multiplied to you. The millennium is also referred to as the 1,000-year reign of peace. In verse 24 of chapter 6, we read that all the accusers of Daniel are thrown into the lion's den along with their families in his place. This corresponds exactly to the book of Revelation, where all the followers of the Antichrist are thrown into the lake of fire. Thus we see in both chapter 2 and chapter 6 of Daniel that the end of the one world communist system is prefigured, and also the magnificent reign of Jesus Christ during the millennium. If you want to take part in that millennium, if you want to survive the 7 years of great tribulation, then you cannot take the mark of the beast, which the one world communist tyranny is going to try to force on every one of us. Now, if you would like more information, simply write to the address you see on your screen.